Ladies and gentlemen, it is an absolute pleasure to have you once again at a live Q&A here at School of Sharks. My name is Dan Diaz and I'm your host. I'm always super excited to be here and ready to pour on value with a few valued guests today. For those of you who are new to the show, a little bit about School of Sharks. School of Sharks is a community that brings together quality educators. These are experienced individuals that are actually in the trenches doing exactly what they say that they're going to be doing. It is a free community on Facebook. If you see the value in this community, please like and share and invite your friends. We follow a motto where we believe that although alone you can go fast and together you can go far, united, we can certainly go farther, faster. And with that in mind, it is our goal to impact 100,000 lives in 1,000 days. And guys, we can't do this by ourselves on our own. So again, thank you so much for being here with us once again. We are using a service called StreamYard. So we want you to comment and we want you to participate. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments section. However, do me a favor and give StreamYard permission to share your information so that we know who you are. Whenever you ask questions or interact during the podcast, we're going to try to get to as many as possible. So before we get to the show and invite our guest over, I always want to know where you guys are from. So if you don't mind in the comments section, maybe typing what your name is and what market. And if you're an active investor, what's your preferred form of investing, whether it's wholesaling, doing the BRRRR method, multifamily, mobile homes, RV parks, owner finance, whatever it is. We always love to hear from where you're at and what you guys like doing. And if you haven't done your first deal, don't be afraid to say, hey, I'm here to learn. I want to know how to get my first deal done. We always love hearing from you guys. Well, without further ado, I want to go ahead and welcome our guest for today. This is a good friend of mine, Mr. TJ Kosen. He has been in real estate since 2006, first cutting his teeth before the crash with 200 plus multifamily units in Tennessee. TJ's company primarily renovates, wholesales, and wholetails. If you're not familiar with that term, you will before the day is over in the DFW area, and wholesales deals throughout the entire state of Texas. He stresses multiple marketing channels and strong operational accountability as keys in all aspects of his real estate investing career. Guys, without further ado, please help me welcome Mr. TJ Kosen to the show.
Hey, Dan, how are you doing?
Welcome.
So thank you so much for having me, man. So first of all, I thought your name was the Gangster. Like, I thought that was your last name. I didn't realize it was Dance, like something else. I didn't know it was Diaz.
It is. I have a proper last name.
Well, I mean, that's my bad, I guess. No, thanks for having me on the show, dude. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you weren't born into real estate. How did you come across it? What were your initial connections with real estate? And ultimately, what have you done to this moment? Please tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a fun journey, I guess. So I started in real estate in 2006. I'd graduated college in 2005, fall of 2004, I think it was. Oh, shoot. Casey Smith is on here, I think. That's awesome. No, graduated college 2004 and did the loan thing for a little while. Always thought real estate would be a fun thing to move into. Not one of those, like, I guess I never was one of those guys who's like, anti-college, anti the formal education thing. Did pretty well, but just saw this as a good opportunity to expand. Just a really good opportunity for making, I guess, a lot of money. So that's the short story. I'm born in San Diego, so did the surfing thing, the college thing, and all that back there. My first deal, as you know, Dan, was apartments in Memphis, Tennessee in 2006. And the only downside of buying apartments in 2006 is that 2008 was like right around the corner. We didn't know that at the time. Like 2006, we thought stuff was fantastic. Anyway, and I don't know, lost some money on one of those deals. That wasn't fun. Went back to San Diego, flipped a bunch of houses. And then 7 years ago, decided to move out to Dallas with my new wife. So we did a lot of things that would be traditionally considered not the best order our first year of marriage. And that was what was that 7.5 years ago? I guess we just celebrated our 8th wedding anniversary. So 7.5 years ago.
Congrats.
Thank you, thank you. Moved to Dallas, and like you said, we do a high volume of flips, wholetails, wholesales, and I mean a bunch of other stuff too. But that's our core competency is those kind of fields. That's our core competency on the exit strategy. We do burrs and rentals. We have some self storage, so we do a bunch of different stuff. For folks getting started, I recommend you don't do a bunch of different stuff. I recommend people get started doing one or two different things really, really well as kind of a start. But anyway, so that's the quick story, and then let's dig into whatever you guys want to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those are you zooming in on your?
No, I was zooming out the other way. No, you told me to take my shirt off and like take shirtless selfies, but it was a little close, so I was getting kind of
Not
claustrophobic.
here. Now, for those who may be new to the show, you threw a word out there, wholetails. What are wholetails? If you can define it briefly.
Yeah, absolutely. So wholesale is what 75%, 80%, 90% minus repairs is what you can wholesale something for. Everyone has read, I suppose, all the wholesale books and taken all the free stuff on Facebook. So that's pretty straightforward. Retail is when you're hitting the retail market, and for the most part with a flip, you're trying to shoot for generally the flip you're trying to shoot for top of the market. Sometimes if you minimize the repairs and do a little bit less, maybe you price it a little bit less or accordingly. So that's a retail. So a wholetail is a combination of both. It's a wholesale while hitting it on the retail market. So for us, that's why there's a lot of ambiguity, and it's probably what we get one of the like largest volume of questions about our company because it's the hardest to understand. Wholesale is easy. An exit strategy on wholesale is, well, what can I sell it for? Well, it depends on how good your buyer's list is and how good your marketing is. Retail, what can I sell it for? Well, on the front end, I can sell it for, take 3 comps and make sure the comps are similar quality in terms of workmanship, in terms of finish out. And let's put on the market, towards the probably higher end of those comps, at least in this market where it's a competitive market. And then wholetail is right in the middle where you do close on the property. So we're closing on the properties that we wholetail. And then we're making an educated guess about what we can sell this property for, generally on the market, generally on the like MLS market, but sometimes still selling it off market, even though we own it. So the advantages of it are everyone knows, well, maybe everyone, maybe people don't really think about it. The biggest buyers pool, the biggest buyers list in the world is the MLS, right?
Yep.
Because everyone sees it. We find that not every buyer necessarily looks on the MLS all the time, so we don't always sell wholesale deals on the MLS. But it is technically the biggest like eyes pool. You get a bunch of people seeing it. The disadvantage of so technically that should drive up the price. The disadvantage of it, of course, is that you do have the transactional risk and the transactional cost of actually closing on the property, which means you have to come up with the money and you have to do all that stuff. So you have that aspect of the risk, but you don't generally have the aspect of the risk of doing a full out renovation because I'm always I don't know, we don't see it as much as we used to. I'm always surprised when I see folks coming in under budget on a reno. I would be shocked seeing myself come in under budget on a reno because I don't think it ever happens. Maybe like once every 20 deals. I don't know. So anyway, so it doesn't have that renovation risk as much. There are some caveats to that where we still do some work to them. So basically, the fundamentals are: we take down the property,
You
we
close
clean
on
up,
it. That's
we close
important.
on it,
Close on it.
close on it. It's important for us. Stick it on the MLS, or even if we don't stick it on the MLS, like generally at the highest level, we stick it on the MLS. Clean it up, make it functionally like presentable, and then collect offers. So it's a little more finesse than a flip, really, because if your pricing is if you don't buy right, you can definitely lose money doing it. It's not we look at it, it's not a way to make a deal that isn't otherwise a deal like a deal. We look at it more as a way to maximize our profit while minimizing our risk while still buying right. So if you think mathematically, everyone knows that the retail market is going like this, right? Everyone knows the wholesale market is going like this, maybe with a little bit of a slight increase in velocity because retail is going up, wholesale is going up because there's less inventory, so it's getting compressed a little bit. And what we're finding with certain levels of renovated properties is wholesale is actually going up quite a bit significantly higher. So almost like an exponential decay curve, closer towards retail for the right type of property. The right type of property for us is on the wholesale market. We identify 4 different kind of buyer avatars. So what's the likely buyer for this property? And that's really kind of key in our business. The way I backed into it was we closed a bunch of stuff, stuck it on the market. Some stuff, our biggest one probably made, I think, $83,000. And that was fantastic. Like, we loved it, of course. Our like one that I thought was going to make 20 grand made like 2,500 bucks. Like, what did we do wrong?
Yeah.
So we kind of reverse engineered, because we were from our perspective, we were putting them on the market at the same kind of formula. So we thought it ought to have the same kind of correlation to payoff.
Yeah.
What we found out, when we reverse engineered, after doing 10, 15, 20 of these things, I'm not the smartest guy, right? I like making the same mistake more than once, because if you make a mistake once, is it actually your mistake, or is it that we're not lucky? If I make the same mistake twice, then it's like, oh no, and you have the same result, then it's like, no, that was a bad experiment. We shouldn't do that again. So that's why I said it took us probably like 20 to figure this out. The ones that didn't make as high a margin, we realized we were selling them to a different buyer profile than the ones that we were selling at top of the market. So at the highest level, we target conventional buyers that are able to get into a property and qualify conventionally, and they're going to pay the most money. Now, they're generally also the most kind of finicky buyers, but it's a good buyer pool as long as you're buying right.
It's a large buyer pool.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, think about it. If you have constrained inventory, and a product that's basically livable as is, then that's going to command the highest price. It's just a no-brainer. Now, these houses can still need $40,000 worth of work, but they can be livable with the AC functional and the foundation like serviceable, and then we sell them at the highest price. There's kind of 2 levels in between of different kind of types of investors, but at the bottom level, we noticed that when we stuck properties on the market, we were getting basically investor flipper buyers. So now we're competing effectively with a demographic that looks very similar to us. Probably not as good on the marketing side, and maybe even better on the renovation side, because maybe if they're not as good at acquiring the house, they might be a little cheaper in terms of the renovation price. Maybe they have crews in house. We don't. We sub everything out. So then that person is going to, or that buyer is going to be projecting in an end profit when they come to renovate and resell it. So if their exit strategy is flip and my exit strategy is wholetail, then that's going to be an inherently smaller margin. So at that point, why would we want to wholetail it ourselves versus flip it ourselves? Because we're going to have a smaller margin. And then it's just a choice on the property itself. Maybe we don't like the property for some fundamental reasons. Maybe we don't like the market for some fundamental reasons. Maybe we're just out of cash and don't want to bother trying to like make a bunch of phone calls and raise money for the rehab. So then we just make a judgment call. On the exit strategy for pricing, so we try to price to target one of these 4 buyer demographics: conventional at the highest and flipper at the lowest, and different types of investors kind of in the middle. The cool thing is, if you misprice it and you're low, you get a ton of offers and a ton of eyes on the property, so you're going to get bid up to what market is. If you misprice it and you're high, you're going to get a lower volume of like showings, but you're still going to get a ton of showings because you're well below retail, and you're going to get a bunch of offers. So relatively quickly, you find out what the actual marketable price of that property is. Because remember, market price for flips, easy. Pick 3 comps, make sure the work is right, do the square foot calculations, do some math, and that's done. Wholesale comps are easy. You call up everyone you know that's a buyer in the area and say, hey, do you want to buy this? And if they say, man, you're 50K overpriced, you're 50K overpriced, if they all say that. So wholesale comps, the risk again is you're taking the property down, but you're pricing it such that if you're wrong low, you get bid up. If you're wrong high, you get bid down. But fundamentally, you still got to buy it right on the front end. So that's the Reader's Digest version. Do they still have Reader's Digest, Dan?
I still read it.
Okay, they do still have it, right? Okay, I thought so.
Yeah, sure. Now, I was hoping somebody would ask this question, and we didn't cover this on the interview, but I'd love to get your thoughts. We've got LaRon Mitchell. I hope I pronounced that correctly. What are your thoughts on the Novation concept that's being thrown around recently?
We should probably take this off market. So I think Novation is
I'll give you my opinion. I don't get it. I don't understand it. Just take it down and put it on the market. I mean, I
yeah.
guess there's some advantages to, closing cost and ultimate risk and responsibility. But I'll be the first one to say I don't understand it. I don't do it.
So
But
I
I
think
don't know
I
your
think
thoughts.
I think fundamentally, and I don't want to be ambiguous,
Sure.
but we look at deals from a deal perspective in terms of what makes sense for this deal. So I think the risks of novations are severely understated in the marketplace in terms of the risks associated basically with how to do these properties and how to do these deals. The benefits of them, I think, are probably overstated, but probably fairly reasonable in terms of how to structure them, in terms of squeezing more equity out of a deal. To be honest with you, Dan, I don't understand it in Texas necessarily, because in Texas we can do net listings. We can do, hey, seller, we'll list it. We'll guarantee a price of 100,000, but we're going to list it at 120, and between 100 and 120, we'll make our money and we'll pay the transactional costs, or we'll negotiate with the buyer or whatever. And then even with a net listing, you can negotiate the prime contract with the listing, like the owner, lower. So I don't really get them in Texas.
Yeah,
I get that there are benefits, especially in states that you can't do net listings in. You can't do them in California. I don't believe you can do them in Tennessee, where we've worked before. So I think there's those fundamental issues, the fundamental like kind of differences. The benefit, obviously, is squeeze some more money out of a deal that maybe has a tighter margin. The disadvantages, again, that are very understated, are you can sign a bunch of powers of attorney and listing agreements and marketing memorandum
everything you
agreements.
want.
But if you're selling a property that someone else owns, and you can sell a power, and you can have a limited power of attorney for the option to sell the property, you get into a bit of legal ambiguity that's probably beyond the scope of this conversation that people don't talk about,
I agree.
that may or may not be enforceable if you actually come to a lawsuit situation. So I look at it like I can go 95 miles an hour down the bush, and if I don't get caught and I get to where I'm going, then I'm good. What happens when something hits the fan and you got to deal with it? So I think the what happens when stuff hits the fan aspect of it is understated in the marketplace. That being said, the profile that I think it makes the most sense is if you have a seller that's very much on the same page as you, very much understanding of the situation, full disclosure of what's going on, aware that the property is probably worth more than what your contract price is on the retail market, but doesn't have the capital or capacity to renovate it or do some light repairs, like maybe it doesn't qualify conventional, but it needs carpet and a condenser to qualify conventional. So like 4 or 5K worth of work, and you have this conversation with the seller. Now, when you put it on the market, you offer to do these repairs for the end buyer, and you include that in the listing presentation. So I think it's got some huge benefits in that way. I think it's not a situation where speed is the primary motivator of the seller. And I think it's not a situation where highly distressed factors are motivations of the seller. I think it's a situation that's very effective when you have the seller in a very um, partnership mindset with the deal, and then you
I
can make
agree.
a ton of money on it.
Yeah.
So I don't. Some folks are putting it out there as a one size fits all. Some friends of mine are doing it. I'm not gonna say anything negative about their business model because I'm not familiar with it. But novations themselves, I think they're a good tool in the toolkit. I don't think they're a one size fits all exit strategy that's very effective.
I agree, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. I think a great opportunity for the seller is when they're looking for convenience. They're not necessarily motivated to do it quickly. There isn't any time pressure to make it happen. Maybe the home needs a little bit of repairs, but it kind of depends on the lender of whatever buyer kind of comes along. So you mentioned kind of a key word where it's a seller who has kind of a partnership mentality to it. I think it would I see it working
Mhm.
like I said before. We've never done it primarily because I don't understand it. I'll be the first to admit it. It just seems like one more tool that I'm not super familiar with. But anyways, I kind of want to dive in a little bit into what is and who is Mr. TJ Kosen for a minute. if that's okay. By the way, guys, if you guys are getting
Yeah, absolutely.
value, do me a favor. There's no charge for this, but I do want you to like and share on your personal walls. Please go ahead and tag me, tag School of Sharks, and if it's okay with Mr. TJ, tag him as well. We want to
Absolutely.
see this group and this community grow for sure. But let's talk about strengths, Mr. TJ. What would you say is one of your biggest strengths as a business owner and investor?
Well, definitely legs day. No, that's not true. So,
He's like, my golf game.
no, that's definitely a weakness. Absolutely. If I was better at golf, I'd raise way more money than I do. Um, no, so I think newer investors tend to get into a bunch. I think they have a misunderstanding of what business they're in. If you're in a flipping business, then buy houses from wholesalers and learn how to flip them and do really, really well with it and have employees that do the construction work for you. If you're in the high volume transactional business, then I think you're a marketing company. I don't think you're a real estate company. So we are a marketing company, not a real estate company. For us, again, we do wholetail is probably 25-30% of our exit strategy. Wholesale is probably 30%. So that leaves another kind of 30 to maybe 40%, depending on what phase in our cycle we're in for flips. But we don't focus on that. We don't really care about that because the flipping stuff, the construction stuff, the rehab stuff, the even the wholetail stuff is all pretty. It's not autopilot, but it's all pretty systematized and all pretty uniform. So from the exit strategy standpoint, we don't think of our deal flow as being you're never repeating a product, right? So you're never repeating the same house. But that being said, I joke and say, I really do the same house over and over and over again. It's just in a different address in a different part of town. So you bump into different problems. You bump into messed up texture here or there, or whatever. But for us in the median home price field, our exit strategy inventory all looks relatively the same. So we're pretty much doing the same look over and over again. So we're not repeating the product exactly, but we are repeating the process. So then when you apply the mindset of, okay, what is a process? What's the most important critical step to this process? Well, the most important critical step to this process is the process for acquiring off-market properties direct from seller with margins that are acceptable in our business. Oh, okay. So that's more important than how we renovate the property. Well, yeah, how we buy right is way more important than how we renovate the property because if we buy right, what we screw up on the renovation doesn't matter so much because we can afford an extra couple $1,000 here and there. Or we can miss a condenser, we can miss a water heater, we can miss insulation in the attic. We'd never put insulation in attics, and now every property we sell, people are asking for new insulation in the attics.
Hmm.
You can miss that stuff. So it's $1,500 here and there, right? But if we repeat the process for acquiring the property off market, direct to seller through our marketing, then that's the part that is the actual fundamentals of the business. So, what does a marketing company look like? A marketing company looks a lot different than a real estate company because a real estate company looks at 2x4s and tile and grout. A marketing company looks at cost per lead, cost per contract, dropout rate of contract, um, close rate of contract, obviously. The one KPI that we don't really care KPI for the newer folks in the room, key performance indicator, in terms of like your analytics on the front end. The one KPI we don't track and we don't really care about is profit per deal. And I get flack for that when I tell people I don't care what my average profit per deal is on a KPI standpoint because we're not doing a volume and we're not doing a single exit strategy sufficient enough to have that be a valuable KPI in the company. And what I mean by that is when we wholesale, maybe an average wholesale profit in something on a market like DFW is 15 to $20,000. Not a bad profit. For us, it's probably closer to $5 to $10,000 on an average wholesale deal, because if we have a larger margin on what would be a good wholesale, we just buy it and then we either wholetail it or renovate it. So then our profit goes from a projected $20,000 to 35 to 45 to our biggest wholetail. Our biggest wholetail, well, I mentioned at the beginning of the thing, I think our biggest wholetail ever was 83 or 87,000. But our biggest wholetail this year was probably, I'm not sure, 45-ish on a deal that we could have wholesaled for a lot less, for maybe the 20K price range.
Yeah.
So our exit strategy KPI is really the least critical to our company because we know that our KPIs on the front end our cost per contract, our marketing targeting, our direct to marketing, like how we approach the deal, is the repeatable process. And then the product kind of is what it is. So do you want to not want to not close on a deal that makes you 5K because it drops down your KPIs? No, of course not. You wholesale that stuff and recoup some of your marketing costs, dump it back into the machine to the process that repeats, knowing that the next deal has a higher likelihood of being a lot bigger.
Yeah, I agree with you. If, for example, you are big into rentals, what's your upfront profit on a rental? It might be nothing, you know,
Oh
it
yeah,
might be your equity, but even your equity, you're not taking it to the bank.
yeah,
So it'd be you could do 100 rentals and not do much, but you know you're doing really well elsewhere. Baskar's got a question. What does your team consist of, and how many people and what roles? Geez,
yeah.
easy there.
Oh, absolutely. Well, we got a graphic. I think I posted it actually in the School of Sharks group and got like, I'm allowed to say shit ton. We got a lot of likes on the graphic. Um, so as a newer investor, your company profile ideally looks like sort of one marketing channel, one exits channel, and one vertical that is pretty much in line with you directly. And the benefit of that is it gets you really well acquainted with the different aspects of the business, and it gets you staying on target because a lot of people get into the business new. They start wholesaling, and then, well, now I want to be a flipper. Well, now you're in a different business. So in order to scale up individually, you really ought to stick with one vertical that you're good at initially, and then add on extra stuff once you've gotten really good at the one vertical. We've been doing it long enough where we've already made all those mistakes. We've already lost not all the money. I'm sure there's more money to lose, but we've already screwed up enough where we can add these extra verticals and monetize them really well for us. So to answer the question in short, the company starts at the top with Country Club Baby 1 and 2, because that's the purpose of doing any of this stuff. If it was up to me, I'd live in a tent at the beach and surf every day, Mel Gibson style from Lethal Weapon. But that's not a fulfilling life. It might be a happy life, but it's not fulfilling. So the top, we got Country Club Baby 1 and 2, and then I guess I get to come in third, right below my wife, which means I get to run everything and have the responsibility, but I don't get to actually have any of the money. So my day to day looks like we just make sure stuff's going. Below that, I have an operations guy who does the coordination with the VAs that do cold calling, list pulling, list stacking, list scrubbing, and then re-going through the list because you run out of data relatively quickly. And then we don't actually have a lead manager. It's at our volume, a lead manager I think would be not terribly beneficial. Below the operations guys level, we have the like basically sales, so acquisitions team. So we have 2 acquisitions agents. Right now, we don't have a dispo agent, so that's something that if we were to increase our volume locally, we would probably look at bringing on. But since we close on such a high volume of the deals that we get in that we originate, we haven't seen a value to us like exclusive dispositions agent in that field yet. So we'll JV wholesale. We'll wholesale stuff in house if it doesn't fit our buy box, and then for the most part, we close on the properties. So that's kind of how the company structure looks. We don't. What was I going to say? No, that's pretty much it. That's on the marketing side. Now on the dispo side, on the construction side, it's a big mess. It's contractors, it's HVAC guys, plumbers, electricians, painters, tile guys all over the place, suppliers. Like that's a big mess. Like putting that in an org chart, good luck. I'll figure out how to put that in an org chart as soon as I figure out how to organize it.
I really like the fact that you speak, and I think a lot of new people should really listen to this. The way to grow is not necessarily to bog yourself with all of these tools and to attempt to do a lot of things. It is rather to find one thing, and it can be as simple as contract assignments, wholesales. Get really, really, really good at that. Understand that you're primarily a marketing machine that acquires, and secondly, a real estate company, and take full advantage of that and just kind of run with it. Same thing kind of with us. We do primarily note origination and owner financing. If something looks like a flip, nobody's going to know about it. I'll put it under contract and I'm going to call a friend of mine who's working in that area and I'll assign it to him. But primarily we are looking for owner financing. And if primarily you want to look for wholesale, then primarily do that and understand your marketing machine for sure. What would you say is one of your most challenging weaknesses? Be
Challenging
real with
weaknesses
us.
in real estate or in life.
Well, I'll let you. I'll let you take a stab
Absolutely.
at it at anyone you want.
Challenging weaknesses. So, legs day. I'm not deadlifting 3 plates. I used to a decade ago. I don't do that anymore. And my golf game doesn't have quite the full effect that it used to have. Um, in terms of, so I think we struggle with the focus aspect of the business. We think of focusing on things as our core competency, but like any entrepreneur, um, and it's a very overused term, but as any small business owner, you see the shiny object thing where, oh, we can do this marketing thing, we can do that marketing thing, we can add this extra exit strategy, and we're pretty good at staying on focus, but it's easy to lose focus in those pieces. So I think it's a weakness because I go look at other stuff, but I think the strength is we know where our kind of value in the marketplace is and where we try to exploit that as well as we can. The danger is you don't want to be so focused and so niche with like one marketing channel or one exit strategy that you can't monetize other aspects or you can't see other aspects when the opportunities arise. But you definitely don't want to just be all over the place where you're like just kind of scatterbrained. So I think that probably is a good way of putting it. I think, Dan.
Yeah, easy to
Absolutely
get
easy to get
distracted.
distracted. 100%. It really is.
Yeah, super super easy. Let's talk about accomplishments. What accomplishments would you say are you most proud of in business or in your personal life?
Accomplishments. Well, this is a fun one, right? We were talking about the focus, and let's, I guess, go into it. So, yeah, we got some time to talk, don't we? At 32, 32, I got married in San Diego. My new wife had a solid W-2 job, and we'd been together for quite a few years by then. We've been together, I think 13 years now. We've been married 8. And we did all the stuff that you're not really supposed to do your first year of marriage. So she quit her job. She moved to a new market. We started a new business, which was kind of this one. We got some sidetracks, unfortunately, along the way. And then the last one was that we had a catastrophic kind of life-changing accident by accident in our first year. So we did a lot of stuff that a lot of people would really test a relationship in. And it was definitely, I wouldn't say a test of our relationship, but it was definitely kind of a reaffirmation of our joint life together. So, well, I don't even want to say long story short because I think it's a good story. We'll talk about it for a minute. Um, about about a year into marriage, about 3 weeks before our first year anniversary, maybe 2 weeks, I think. I fell and broke my back in a rock climbing accident, shattered my technically L1 vertebrae. So this thing like fell on my butt from about 25 feet up. My vertebrae went like that, busted out, and knocked me out. Took me down to the hospital, and the got into surgery like really quick. So the doctors and the therapist that did all that told my wife. They didn't tell me, but told my wife that I'd probably never walk again, and I may not even regain feeling below the point of injury. So when you have a spinal cord injury, the ambiguity is below the level of the injury. So people that have a high level injury up here, that's why they can't move their arms because they have a lot of nerve damage here, and the nerves can't connect to stuff below that. So mine was right in the middle of the back. So the likelihood of me being able to regain feeling below that was really up in the air. They may have, well, I mean, they're doctors, right? They always say, "Hey, here's the worst case," and they never give you any hope for having anything to be anything except for the worst case. So anyway, spent 2 weeks in the hospital in Dallas, here at Parkland, which fortunately has a really good spinal care surgery facility. Inside of about 2 hours after the injury, they got me into surgery and bolted metal rods into my back, screwed them into the remaining vertebrae. One was pretty much kind of like halfway gone. Kind of pushed that one back in place. Um, got me out of surgery, moved me to recovery like a day later, and said, "Well, good luck. We'll see what happens." I was there for 2 weeks, and then after that, they actually. So again, I'd moved to Dallas in June. This was November, October. This is October. So my insurance was still in San Diego in California. The weird thing about insurance is they paid to fly me on a medical jet back to San Diego and put me in rehab for physical therapy in San Diego because of insurance. So not a big fan of not a big fan of all the changes that Obamacare did in the marketplace, but I'm a huge fan of the necessity of keeping insurance for health insurance for catastrophic events like this, because my overall bill probably would have been, I think like
Hundreds of thousands.
380,000, 400,000. At the time, I mean, now I could afford it, but at the time, the other option would be I probably wouldn't ever have this opportunity to have physical therapy and learn how to walk again. So that's a risk mitigation strategy on the front end, is have insurance that's in place that's good. In San Diego, I spent 8 weeks in the hospital. Day 1 through like 4, every time you meet a new person, they ask you, what are your goals while you're in the hospital? What are your goals here? And a lot of folks, their goals are maybe to regain mobility in a wheelchair in my house, or maybe to regain partial movement, or maybe be able to transfer myself from a wheelchair into the bathtub and like take a bath myself. And for some folks, and for some injuries, and for some profiles, that's absolutely the top possibility for a goal. When you don't know what your recoverability potential is, you say stupid shit because you don't know what the possibilities are. So you say, well, my goal is to walk out of the hospital before the end of the year, and the end of the year is 8 weeks off, and we're going to make it happen. And they say, well, what happens if it doesn't happen? And you say something ridiculous because you're under a bunch of drugs, and say, oh, I don't really know what the possibility of what I do if that doesn't happen is, because I don't see any other possibility except for making that happen. So if it doesn't happen, I don't know what the possibility is, but it doesn't sound pretty for me, because as far as I fell rock climbing, right? I used to surf, scuba dive, rock climb, bike ride, mountain bike, golf, all this stuff in my mind psychologically is that's over. I can't do that anymore at all unless I walk out of here. So as far as I can tell, my life is over. Um, so then how do you approach fixing that? Well, either you resign yourself to having a life that's significantly different than the one you're accustomed to. And I don't know if mentally I would have been able to do that. So the other option is, well, let's work our ass off on one goal, on one singular thing, and make it possible as hard as we can. And at least we'll know then if we fail, at least we'll know we gave it as good a shot as we possibly could. And that the failure wasn't a point of failure on us. It was a point of failure in terms of what the actual recovery potential was. Um, so that's obviously I can walk. So we met the goal. I walked out of the hospital New Year's Eve, 2014, New Year's Eve, day before 2015, and I had a walker, and a still had a wheelchair that I could use for like longer distances, but was able to get up into my truck, which was kind of up there. And that was the beginning of the recovery, because that was the beginning of a new life, really, in some respects. The recovery was, well, if I can walk, then I guess I'll keep living. If I can't walk, then I'm not even sure what the option looks like. So the recovery process was really probably about 2 years after that, where your body finally stabilizes and gets going. The easy part was the hospital part. The easy part was one focus and one objective, and getting out of there and making it happen. The hard part was realizing that recovery takes a long time, and that you inherently have a distracted focus, because you can't focus on working out all the time and walking all the time. You have to focus on making money and doing other stuff. But the takeaway that other people can apply this in their personal lives are really that when you have a singular focus, when you have one objective and one goal, and if your goal is, I want to get a deal for a new person, I want to get a deal in 2 weeks. For an experienced person, I want to have a consistent 20, 25, 30K month every month. For the more experienced person, I want to have 100K months twice a year. Now I want to have them 6 times a year. Now I want to have them 12 times a year. The takeaway is, when you have the mindset of, the only thing that I have, the only objective that I have is to walk out of the hospital on this date at this time, even if it's not very good, then that's all you do. That's all you focus on. Your entire life revolves around that. In business, the way to be the most successful is to take that same type of mindset and apply it to a daily life and a daily focus. Now, in business and in life, our destination, our business goal is always 10% farther down the road than where we are, right? So by definition, when I get 10% farther down, you look around, it's like, well, that wasn't that hard. Let's go 10% farther. So the disadvantage is, in terms of application, it becomes a lot harder to stay that focused on a long-term time frame. 8 weeks in the hospital is relatively acute, relatively easily. In business, you have to have these incremental objectives that are just beyond reach, just beyond view, just beyond what you think you might be able to do. But at the same time, something that pushes yourself to be better. Because realistically, the best mindset about anything in terms of building business is understanding that it's a progressive journey to not a destination, but it's a progressive journey farther down in terms of getting closer to the person and the direction you want to be. Because I'm telling you, you make 100 grand in a month, you're like, well, that's cool. My wife used to make 30 grand a year working 40 hours a week in San Diego and had a side job. Um, yeah, you make it. That's awesome. But that's not a destination. That's a goalpost.
Yeah, yeah. I really liked and appreciate. I want to highlight when you said that you were in the hospital and that you couldn't walk. You really only had one goal in mind, and there was zero mentally. You had burnt every other possible bridge. You had burnt every other possible ship, to the point that doctors asked you, "Well, what if you can't reach it?" You know, you're probably like, I don't know. Like, what if the Earth explodes tomorrow? I
I
mean,
made
what's the
a
plan for that?
I
You
made a
know?
well, I made a mental health therapist cry when she said, "Well, what if you can't do it?" And I said, "I don't know. I'll probably take my kayak out on the beach and not even come back." And I made her cry. And
Oh,
that's probably very empathetic of her to cry about that. Unfortunately, it didn't come to that. But maybe I was on enough drugs or not enough drugs or too many drugs. I don't know. Or maybe I shouldn't even blame the drugs. But that's the mental state you're in, unfortunately, going through something like that. So it's not healthy in your business to have that mental breakdown where there are no other objectives, that the other option just isn't a possibility. But you need to have the mental clarity of, this is the only objective that I see myself fulfilling. So let's push for this and let's pursue this for with all the passion, all the possibility we have in our lives.
yeah,
So don't go kill yourself if you can't make it, but understand that it is a progressive journey that you need to have these goalposts in order to try to obtain.
for sure. I don't know who you are, Facebook user. Got to get StreamYard permission to share your identity, but I'm glad. It says, I'm glad I tuned in today. Thank you for sharing your story. I needed to hear this today.
I will
Who knows,
absolutely.
CJ?
Thank you
Maybe
so
you
much.
touch someone.
Well, thank you. I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
that's why we do it. Now, memory serves me right. I know time's kind of a ticking, but you shared when we were preparing for this interview a deal that was pretty memorable for you. Now, I don't know if you want to share a little bit about it, but I think the audience would get a lot of benefit from it. You mind sharing it with the group?
So we talk about the one that made a lot of money or the one that lost a lot of money?
Hey, they're both memorable, man.
Let's talk about the first deal. Um, so I'd be a lot more successful in business if I got in probably at a different. If I hadn't made all the mistakes that I made, I'd probably be a lot more successful than I am. And we obviously do fairly well for ourselves. My first deal was a little weird, probably a little difficult in this current marketplace environment. My first deal was June 2006. Here's the bro tip for y'all. Don't buy a deal June 2006, June 6th, 2006. Just don't do it. Okay,
That's
don't do
not
it.
a good date. Not a good
That's
date.
that's absolutely
If it
that's
ever
just
happens
what it feels
again,
on.
don't buy a deal that day.
Don't do it. Don't do it. It's horrible. It's a horrible idea. I mean, on paper it looked brilliant. On paper, I look like a rock star, brilliant guy. In retrospect, uh, so the problem with 2006, I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, it's only 2 years away from 2008. And if you knew that 2008 was 2 years away from 2006, maybe you would have thought about things differently. That being said, just market dynamics. I don't think we're headed for another 2008 next year or the year after. The year after that, call me up and let's talk. I'm not sure. My first deal was 112 distressed apartment units in Memphis, Tennessee, in a C-ish, C-minus neighborhood. Um, when we bought, we were absolutely the crappiest, cheapest price per unit property in the entire submarket. So the submarket being basically the greater like kind of neighborhood. And we were a huge value add opportunity. So we bought 112 units for $860,000, something like that. It came out to be about, yeah, it sounds brilliant, right? It sounds absolutely brilliant.
What
Um,
can possibly go wrong?
oh yeah, no kidding, right? That's what we thought. Well, 2008 can go wrong. And the value add was about 11 to $15,000 a unit capitalization for, is my computer frozen?
No,
Okay,
you're
still
good.
going. Glitched out on my side. So the value add was about $11 to $15,000 capitalization per unit. So 112 times say 10 grand, whatever. million two, something like that, capitalization, with the goal of taking it from about 10% occupied at the beginning of the process to 100%,
It
about
was 10% occupied. It was a
Mhm.
ghost town.
Yeah, it was a ghost town. Yeah. But it was in a submarket that a lot of other inventory had turned over recently, was getting renovated, and that there were solid comps in the 35K a unit price range on the fully renovated aspect. So that part of it looked pretty solid. Um, and I like to say again, we did lose money on this one. We lost probably between this one and another one, there are several $1 million, but this one specifically probably lost about $1.2 million, $1.4 million, somewhere in there. I don't
And
know
this
if you
was
really
your
bother
first
looking at the math,
deal?
huh?
And this was your first deal?
Yeah, first deal. Yeah, I mean, hey, go big or
I
go
want,
home,
I
right?
want you guys to hear that. So before he started, he broke his back.
No,
Once
no,
he
no, no, no.
started,
Hold on. I broke my back. I broke my back in 2013.
oh,
14,
okay.
14, 14. This was
So,
2006.
so
This
you
was
lost a
2006.
couple million on your first deal, then you broke your
Yeah,
back.
yeah,
Okay, just
yeah,
making sure.
yeah.
For
That's the right.
anyone
That's
who
not.
says they have challenges.
It's well. I mean, success is a linear path, right? Like I got these
Oh yeah,
goals. I got this objective. I want to get there. You just go for it. The problem is when something comes over 2008, it hits you from the side and fall while rock climbing sucker punches you. So I
oh
guess that's the
boy.
takeaway. Really, is we all have this perfect. The biggest problem with the business is we all have this perfect objective and think that once we reach the objective, it's going to lead to happiness without realizing that the process to get to the objective is the fulfilling aspect of our life. And then the other problem is we all have this linear trajectory in mind. And when something gets us off track from that trajectory, we have to have a linear trajectory in order to be successful. You have to be single minded and goal oriented. But the problem is when something that you didn't expect comes and hits you again, like falling while rock climbing, shattering your back, and being incapacitated for 6 months. You got to recoup and you got to have the resiliency to kind of keep going. So anyway, back to Memphis. No, it was so renovation wise. I went back there, hired a bunch of contractor crews, hired property management, property maintenance, had a big crew team working for us. It was actually a stretch for me to move from a kind of high volume, single asset, single location, repeatable product in every single unit. Because obviously, if you're doing apartments, they all look the same when you're done. To flipping, because flipping, you're still somewhat repairing to the subdivision in the market. For us, it was easy in the apartments. Everything's exactly the same. We call the carpet guy and we put on the same carpet, put in everywhere. So the rehab was relatively successful, probably a little bit over budget, but that's a big project, so that happens. The lease up was relatively successful, at least initially. The biggest problem was when people do the math on cap rates, they only go one direction with their cap rate math. They go, if I have 100 units and I'm operating at 10 cap, then if I raise the rent $100, I made $1 million. That's easy math. Now, obviously, if you can buy 10 cap apartments, you should probably buy like all those you can buy right now. So divide it by two and do 5 cap and do 50 units, and it's the same price. You make $1 million. The problem is when an event like 2008 came around in that subdivision, the math goes backwards too. So instead of renting one bedrooms for 485, 495, we're dropping our price 25% and renting them out for 285, 295.
Hmm.
So if you make $1 million by raising your raising your rent $100 and capitalizing, you lose $1 million by having your gross collections go down 25% inside of a 3 to 6 month time frame. That kind of sucks. That kind of sucks. We had a lot of built-in equity, so we cashed some out when we sold and made some money. If we'd held on, what would happen differently? I mean, that's I'm not really sure. Um, the takeaway from that isn't don't buy apartments, and it's not even necessarily don't buy apartments in Memphis in these subdivisions because I know these properties. I know the brokers that buy and sell them. I could probably jump back in and buy if I wanted to. The takeaway is at the time the submarket was overbuilt with competing inventory in a property profile that was very difficult to manage and very difficult to keep occupied in a declining economy. Those are the takeaways. So repeating those takeaways in our current market is very difficult, and I don't expect that there's many markets that those really apply to very well. But the takeaways are with the multifamily is there's probably several thousand fewer units in these subdivisions now than there were when I was operating out there because of just different things. Things got foreclosed on, fires. I know of 1,000 units that got just bulldozed, that kind of thing when the market tanked. So the market dynamics out there are significantly different than they are now.
Were
Um,
you originally, was your original plan and exit strategy to buy, rehab, go ahead and put leases in everyone and sell it? Or were you planning on holding it long term originally?
we thought about probably holding it long term and keeping it for cash flow. On paper, the cash flow at the way the market was at acquisition was relatively strong. You're still dealing with C properties, C minus properties. So realistically, we probably would have operated it for 3 to 5 years at stabilization and sold it. I'm not sure. Our goal was to do that. I mean, in furtherment of that goal, my second deal was actually 98 units in a subdivision that was very similar. Not a subdivision, a submarket that was very similar. That one we bought at about 70% stabilized. And then we went in to capitalize a little bit more. We secured long term financing for it. The first property was kind of cool. I bought it, assumed a hard money loan that was prime plus two. So actually very reasonable interest rate. And it was
That's not
variable.
bad at all.
No, not bad at all. And prime was falling at the time. So prime was going from, I don't remember, but it was going down. I had the sellers hold back a $200,000 second because they bought it from foreclosure. So they had some equity in it. And then I raised money for the rehab float because the hard money loan was for construction as well. Again, at a good rate, like a really good hard money loan rate. I don't even know if I get those rates now with the hard money lenders I have. Um, anyway, so and then raised money for the down payment, which was about 200K, and the rehab float and the operation loss float, which we projected to be about 6 months of recurring operational loss until we get it leased up and stabilized. Um, so I mean, under those, that's a pretty creative deal at 25, I think 20. I was 24, 25. Put that
That's
together, built it out. The second deal was actually the same sellers because I became pretty good friends with them. Um,
awesome.
was a 98 units. I assumed the same hard money lender for financing. Assumed the same. I came up with a different partner for helping with a second for the down payment. We came up with another, I think only about 150K. So we bought 98 units for 150K out of pocket. And then we refinanced that one, paid off the second, paid off the first, paid off the down payment partner, and had a stabilization holdback for when we showed, I think it was 3 or 6 months of stabilization. Then they'd released the escrowed funds for that. We got that released. And that was a pretty good property that just kind of chugged along. It made money for about a year and a half. So my second deal was only 6 months after my first deal. The first one, 112 units, was June. This one was in, I think, November or December. I bought it in, so 6, 7 months later, and it was stable. So it was a good little property.
Would you say that you learned from the first one in regards to the
Yeah,
lawsuit?
yeah, I
And
think
you kind
so.
of adjust
Yeah, we applied our. We actually inherited a really good property manager on the second one, so that was already in place. That was good, but we definitely applied our like our rehab skills and our pricing power because when you're painting 112 apartment units, you're buying paint for as cheap as you can buy it, and you're repeating a process. So we definitely applied that process to the second property. And the cool thing was we obviously saved on labor costs because we just moved guys over really quick to knock out a get ready and then move them back to the main rehab project because they were only maybe 2 miles apart. Second property bought for 1.3, got a loan on it for 1 point, I think 2 with the takeout refinance. I don't remember exactly. How bad the market got in 2008. Everyone's like, well, why don't you just hold on and like keep going for 2008 to 2011? I short sold it in 2010 or maybe 11. I don't remember. I think 10 for $385,000. So the bank itself took about $1 million hit on the property.
wow.
Not quite. They took about $800,000 hit. Um, and that was probably below market a little bit, but that's what we had in terms of we tried to sell it. We tried to like seller finance it to another guy. He couldn't operate it worth a damn. So I went back there. I took it back. And then we negotiated with the bank, got a short sale on it. The guy that bought it from me, so why didn't we just keep it and have it for that price? The guy that bought it from me at that price lost money. The guy that bought it from him lost money. And the guy that bought it from him is a subsidiary of a large lender that's based out of Texas that bought it to rehab and renovate and lease up at 100% vacant. And they currently have a $2 million second loan on the no, they currently have $1 million second loan on the property. When we sold it, it was about 50% occupied. It's now 100% vacant. And the last time that property traded was at $2.2 million. So it's just a different market now than it was when we bought, because we bought it at 1.3. It's a different market than when we sold, because we sold it at 380, 400, something like that. And at least 2 or 3 of the people that owned it between now and then also lost money on it. So that's, I guess, the takeaway from that is really a in-depth understanding of the submarket that you're operating in, an in-depth understanding of the competing inventory. Because when I was doing this, the local market, the newspaper would publish every property that sold over 100 units in the entire city, because Memphis is not that big.
Oh,
It's maybe 1.5 million people or something like that. So I knew every property, more than 100 units that sold. Um, More often than not, I knew the broker that sold them, and I knew what their occupancy was and what their potential was. So that's how ingrained and like how knowledgeable I was once I got in there. Um, Again, 2008 to 10 completely turned all that upside down and went the wrong direction. So a market changing dynamic can really mess with your business. And again, I don't think we're in that, because the fundamentals of where we are now in our market are very different than they were back then. But it's stuff that people, I guess, just don't talk about because they haven't really experienced a long-term downturn.
yeah. And I really do, appreciate that. Most of our listeners, you were speaking very high level, 36
Sorry about that.
thousand feet, airplane ride, which is great. We don't hear that, and the average person doesn't get an opportunity to sit in a room with somebody who's doing deals like these and has the vast experience that we're sharing here today. So definitely appreciate it. I do want to hone in though. If someone is barely starting out, and I want you to mentally kind of go back to when you were starting out. If someone is barely starting out, and maybe they've done a deal or two, but nevertheless they're still barely starting out. What are some words of wisdom that you can share with them that'll help them with the overall direction and vision that maybe have been shared with you?
Yeah, let's do just for fun, let's do two different pieces of it. One is the most critical step in the business is the mindset. And that's what allowed me to walk out of the hospital. It's what allowed me to kind of regroup after losing several $1 million in Memphis. Went back to San Diego. I surfed a lot for about 6 months to kind of get my mind right. And then we just started buying the crap out of the bottom of the market in California because we knew what was coming. So get your mind in the game where this is the objective. Don't focus on other stuff, side hustles. Everything makes money, right? Flipping watches makes money in this market. It's a crazy market. Buying cars off of Craigslist and selling them at the auction makes money. Real estate makes money. All this stuff makes money, but none of it makes really, really good, repeatable money unless you focus on the business aspect of it and the mindset aspect of it. Um, so that's the most critical step to success in terms of like practical action points. Is again kind of talking about all this stuff makes money. Flipping Rolexes makes money, I guess, as long as you can do it right. All this stuff also loses money. So
That's true.
if you do it wrong, you lose money. Um, so find out 1 or 2 things that you think would be enjoyable to have your business patterned off of. Figure out who's doing those and how they're having success. What levels of success are potential, because there are different levels of success potential in each of these things. There's caps at each different type of business as well. And then really exploit, and I don't mean exploit in a bad way, but really exploit the opportunities in those fields by becoming an expert and becoming really, really good at just 1 or 2 things. So again, we're really good at flipping. We're really good at flipping. We're really good at wholetailing. We're mediocre at wholesaling because we're really good at those other 2 exit strategies. Probably my weakest link right now actually is burring, because every time we get a really good deal, I just sell it because I like making money.
You're like, no,
So
I ain't keeping it.
I was like, nah, I make how much more if I sell it? Nah. So I mean, but we do a lot of it and we're good at it. But don't try to do all those different things day one. Ways to like drastically accelerate someone's potential and likelihood of a positive outcome, because it's all about skewing things in your favor to have a likelihood of an outcome that's in your favor. So picking a 1 or 2 linear marketing strategies that you think you can do well, and then optimizing them and doing well with them before adding on a bunch of different marketing strategies is huge. So bandit signs, it's an easy, great example. We don't do bandit signs because we just don't want to, but it's a great example. There's ways to do them well, and
They
there's
do
ways to do
work.
them not well. If you're in San Diego, if you're in La Jolla, Coronado, $5 million neighborhoods, bandit signs are shit idea. Don't do them. If you're in Highland Park in Dallas, if you're in Frisco, To be honest, I don't know if they work in Frisco, but I don't expect that they do. But there
They're
are ways.
working San Antonio.
Yeah, there are ways to make bandit signs work in markets that people are going to call off of bandit signs. So that works. PPC marketing, we're incredible at it, but I know a lot of people that aren't very good at it because they don't do it. They don't do it well. So pick one or two. Cold calling. Again, we're in the middle of cold calling. We're decent at it, but we're not the best at it. But it absolutely works. But there's ways to make it work well, and there's ways to not make it work well. So study the ways that make it work well. Make sure that it's something that you actually want to do, because there's two problems with building a business. One is the operational headaches of building a business, and two is in the success of building a business you don't want to have. So a lot of people don't talk about that. There's all this stuff works, and you don't want to be in a position where you built a business you don't want to have, because now it takes more time to unwind it than it does to actually build it in the first place. So those are the mindset pieces, I think, combined with the action point pieces that skew the likelihood of success, and really massive success, in the favor of the person taking them.
Yeah, absolutely. Bryce, McKinley, good to have you. He summed it up real nicely. I think you'll agree with it. Number 4, Step to Riches by Napoleon Hill is specialized knowledge. If you can't master something, find someone that has and study that master. For sure. I'm a big believer in that. I'm as smart as you, and we think we're smart, but as smart as we think we're not going to realistically create the new invention that will transform humanity. I mean, I know I'm not. Maybe you are. I don't know, but I know I'm not. However, my goal is simply, hey, what's working? What's working for people? I'm not a creator. I'm an imitator from the perspective of, hey, is something working for someone else? Let me duplicate it. Let me bring it on board. Let me do it again. Let me see if I can do it quicker, faster, taller, or just repeat it more often. My ego is not that big. It really isn't.
I'm not a creator. Like you said, what you said, you're a
imitator. Yeah,
imitator. You're an imitator, and you're an iterator, where you want to try to make the iterated process a little bit better each time. So I think everyone in this business likes to think that they're an entrepreneur because they're working for themselves. And I like that word from a mindset perspective, but from a accomplishment perspective, I think most people, myself included, really, we're small business owners that are following a repeatable pattern that we can then incrementally make better and make work better for ourselves. So that's where the entrepreneurial mindset aspect of it comes in. I'm not Steve Jobs. I'm not the Facebook guy. I'm not him. I actually finished college. Uh, Realistically, most people aren't those people. The college dropout that's the most richest person in the world, most people aren't that person. So we find a pattern, and it's a harsh truth, but I like to say, if you want me to sugarcoat it, I'll buy you some Skittles. The harsh truth is that the best way to have like massive success is really to find a process that works well, copy the process, make the process work better for you than it does for the competition. Because I joke about it, but we do say the best way to make money in this business is to be better than the competition. But in a marketplace where the barriers to entry are realistically not very high, being better than the competition really isn't that hard. It takes study, it takes hard work, it takes focus, it takes a singular mindset, and it takes a pattern that you can emulate your business off of.
Yeah, for sure. Well, listen, TJ, I really appreciate the time that you've shared with us, sharing your experience and really your insight. Thank you so much for being generous with your time. And guys, if you guys got value out of this podcast, just do me a favor and share it on your wall. Feel free to tag School of Sharks, myself, or TJ himself. We want to see the community grow. So I really want to express my appreciations, TJ. Thank you so much for being here on board. And if you guys like what TJ has shared with you guys, I just want to remind you that TJ has made a commitment to the community to help you grow. And what I mean by this is, in the next week or so, he's going to be doing a few challenging posts for the group. And these posts, I'm going to give you guys just a little bit to kind of whet your appetite on what it's going to be like. Friday is going to be a homework related post. He's going to share one thing that can help you with your mindset in regards to strengthening your family, your outlook, or your happiness. Now, the reason I'm going to say it's a challenge is because he's going to invite the members to pledge to do it by commenting yes. So if you guys want to receive complimentary training on a mindset level from TJ himself, just go ahead and follow the post and comment yes, and share it with the group. Saturday, he's going to be sharing a story relating to a challenge or lesson that he had to overcome in detail and how you can do it as well. Sunday, again, he's going to be sharing a practical application in which you can jumpstart your week, perhaps what he does or what he has seen successful on his end. And again, he's going to be inviting the members to pledge to do it. Sunday is when most businessmen and women start their week, not on Monday. Monday, we execute the plan that we put into place on Sunday. So you guys want to stay in tune for that. Monday, he's going to be sharing 1 or 2 negotiation tools or scripts that work for him. And Tuesday, he'll be sharing tips on how to overall boost your business. So guys, we're super excited to have TJ generously share his time and his experience. And before we cut off, TJ, anything else you want to share with the group before we leave?
Yeah. Any questions about where you're at or where you want to go with obviously real estate, or any questions about anything that I went over today? Pretty much an open book. I like to tell people we don't have any problem telling anyone about our best deal in the past 12 months because I think that's motivating. And I don't have any problem, obviously, telling anyone about the worst deal I've done in the past 16 years because I think that's educational and informative. And realistically, for us anyway, it's not about the objective because I don't have an objective. We have goals and we have a trajectory that we want to take our business on. So focus less on these hard goals that are crazy, because once you get to those, then you're never happy that you got there. You're either disappointed that it was that easy, disappointed that you put that much work into something that doesn't make you happy, or disappointed that you haven't reached the next objective that you set for yourself. So I'm a firm believer that happiness it's a bad objective. Happiness is a good byproduct of accomplishing things in your life that make you feel fulfilled.
I love it. I love it. And guys, if you want to stay connected with TJ, he's active in the group. He also left his email down below, tj.kosen@gmail.com, his phone number as well as mine. I want to leave you guys with just a thought from Chris Grozer. Opportunities don't happen, you create them. So guys, I hope you guys have a great week. Stay tuned for next week. And we look forward to the words of wisdom throughout the week from TJ Kosen. Thank you so much, TJ. You guys have a great one.
Thanks so much, Dan. I appreciate it.